Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow as she studied the anomalous readings on her diagnostic tablet. The environmental maintenance tunnels beneath mining colony X274 were always uncomfortable, but today something felt different. The air held an electric charge that made her skin tingle, and her instruments were picking up energy signatures that shouldn't exist this deep underground. "Control, are you seeing these readings?" She adjusted her headlamp, casting light on the rough-hewn walls of the tunnel. The colony had been established only 15 years ago on this distant exoplanet. Yet these deeper tunnels looked far older than they should. Static crackled through her comm unit before Tommy's voice came through. "Negative, Sarah. Your signal's degrading. Whatever's causing those power fluctuations is interfering with our systems. Maybe you should head back up." Sarah ran her gloved hand along the tunnel wall, feeling unusual smoothness beneath the layer of dust and grime. "Just give me 10 more minutes. These readings could be affecting our environmental systems. We can't risk a failure in the primary heat exchangers." She built her career on being thorough. At 32, she was the youngest chief environmental engineer the colony had ever appointed, and she hadn't earned that position by walking away from anomalies. The tunnel curved sharply, and Sarah's light revealed something that made her stop dead in her tracks. The rough mining tunnel transitioned abruptly into a perfectly geometric corridor. The walls were made of an unknown material that seemed to absorb her headlamp's beam. Yet somehow the surface held a faint phosphorescent glow. "Tommy, are you seeing my video feed?" Sarah's heart raced as she approached the threshold between human-made tunnel and whatever this was. Only static answered her. Sarah checked her atmosphere readings. Stable. Oxygen levels normal. No toxic gases. She took a deep breath and stepped across the threshold. The moment her boot touched the alien floor, lines of soft blue light began to trace their way through the material, spreading out from her footprint like ripples in a pond. The walls hummed with a barely perceptible vibration. "Well," she whispered to herself, "I guess it's not completely dormant." The corridor stretched ahead for about 30 meters before opening into a larger chamber. Sarah's engineering mind was already cataloging details: the perfect joins between wall panels, the complete absence of dust despite obvious age, the way the temperature seemed to regulate itself around her. The chamber beyond took her breath away. It was vast, easily the size of the colony's main hangar, but filled with equipment she could barely comprehend. Rows of what appeared to be terminals lined the walls, their screens dark but somehow not dead. In the center, a massive cylindrical structure reached from floor to ceiling, covered in the same phosphorescent material as the walls. "Tommy, if you can hear me, I found something. Something big." She approached one of the terminals, her tablet continuing to record impossible energy readings. "This isn't just some random cave system. This is technology, but not ours." The terminal's surface was smooth, without any visible controls or interfaces. Sarah reached out, her engineer's curiosity overwhelming her caution. As her fingers neared the surface, a holographic display flickered to life, projecting symbols she didn't recognize into the air before her. Suddenly, the entire chamber hummed to life. Lights began to activate in sequence, spreading out from where she stood like a wave of awakening. The cylindrical structure in the center began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic glow. Atmospheric analysis initiated. A voice announced in perfect English, causing Sarah to jump. "Unknown biological entity detected. Processing." "Hello." Sarah's voice echoed in the chamber. "I'm Sarah Chen, environmental engineer from mining colony X274. Can you understand me?" The voice returned, now seeming to come from all around her. Language analysis complete. English linguistic patterns recognized and adapted. Warning: this facility has been in dormancy for approximately 47,291 local solar cycles. Primary systems require calibration before full activation. Sarah's mind raced with questions. Why could it speak English? How had it analyzed and adapted so quickly? But her engineering training kept her focused on the practical. What is this facility? What was it used for? The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of the complex. This is Research Station Epsilon, dedicated to the study and development of environmental manipulation technologies. Your presence has initiated emergency revival protocols. Sarah's eyes widened as she processed the implications. Environmental manipulation technologies, on a scale that could affect entire planets. The potential applications for colonial development were staggering. "Why did you wake up for me?" she asked, studying the map carefully. There must have been others who came close before. The voice took on a different tone, almost curious. "Your genetic structure contains markers of deliberate environmental adaptation. You are the first entity to enter this facility that displays signs of intentional biological engineering for survival in non-native environments." Sarah touched the small scar behind her ear, the mark of the genetic modifications all colonial engineers received to help them work in extreme environments. "You recognize that?" "Affirmative. This facility's primary directive is to advance environmental adaptation technologies. Your presence indicates a species that has begun to master such techniques. Protocol dictates interaction with such species." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the chamber. The holographic display turned red, showing multiple warning symbols. "Alert," the voice announced, "now urgent. Facility power core entering critical state. 47 millennia of dormancy have degraded key systems. Without immediate intervention, catastrophic failure will occur within 2 hours. This facility and everything within a 50-kilometer radius will be destroyed." Sarah felt her stomach drop. The colony was just 45 kilometers away. The voice continued, "Do you possess sufficient engineering expertise to assist in stabilization procedures?" Sarah looked at the incomprehensible alien technology surrounding her, then at her own simple diagnostic tablet. The fate of the entire colony might depend on her answer. She squared her shoulders and stepped forward. "Show me what needs to be done." The chamber's lights brightened, and new holographic displays appeared, showing complex system diagrams. "Beginning emergency protocol briefing," the voice announced. "Time remaining, 1 hour, 58 minutes. Sarah pulled out her tools and took a deep breath. It was going to be a long night. The holographic displays bathed Sarah's face in an eerie red glow as she studied the facility's power systems. Sweat trickled down her neck as she worked to understand the alien schematics floating before her. "Power core containment at 60% and falling," the AI announced. "Main coolant systems non-functional. Secondary systems failing." Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "Show me the coolant flow diagrams again. There has to be a way to reroute the secondary systems." The AI complied, displaying a complex network of conduits and chambers. To Sarah's trained eye, the basic principles weren't so different from the colony's thermal regulation systems, just exponentially more advanced. "Your species appears to understand thermal dynamics," the AI observed, "yet your colonial technology is primitive by comparison." Sarah managed a tight smile as she traced a possible bypass route. "Sometimes primitive is more reliable. We learned that the hard way on other colonies." She pointed to a junction in the diagram. "Can we redirect coolant flow through these auxiliary channels?" "Negative. Those channels were damaged during the facility's initial shutdown sequence. Physical repairs would be required." Sarah reached for her toolkit. "Then let's make repairs. Guide me to the access point." The chamber's floor shifted beneath her feet, panels realigning to create a path. Sarah followed the glowing markers, her mind already cataloging the tools she'd need. The facility's response to her movements was unsettling. It felt almost eager, like a long-dormant creature stretching its limbs. "Warning," the AI's voice followed her. "Repair area highly radioactive. Your current biological shielding inadequate." Sarah paused. "My genetic mods can handle radiation for short periods." "How long would the repairs take?" "Approximately 15 minutes. However, Exposure at these levels would cause severe cellular damage within 5 minutes. Sarah bit her lip, thinking. Show me the damaged section's schematics. A detailed hologram appeared before her. The break in the coolant line was clear, a hairline fracture that had widened over millennia. What materials do you have available for repairs? She asked. The AI listed several alien alloys, their properties scrolling past in English. Sarah's eyes caught on one description. Wait, this one. You say it's a thermally conductive gel that hardens under radiation. Correct. But application requires direct contact with the damaged area. Sarah smiled. Perfect. We don't need to repair the whole line. We just need to create a new path for the coolant. She pulled out her tablet, running quick calculations. If we can get that gel into position, the radiation itself will cure it into a new conduit. There was a pause before the AI responded. This solution has a 47% chance of success. Alternative options should be considered. We don't have time for alternatives, Sarah said, checking the emergency seals on her maintenance suit. The core containment is dropping by the minute. Sometimes you have to work with what you've got. The AI's next words carried a hint of what almost sounded like concern. Your species displays an unusual acceptance of risk. We call it making do, Sarah replied, securing her helmet. Now, where's that gel? A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a container of silvery liquid. Sarah grabbed it and started toward the access corridor, but the AI's voice stopped her. Engineer Chen, before you proceed, this facility contains research that could advance your species by centuries. If you fail, that knowledge will be lost. Sarah checked the seals on the container. All the more reason to make sure we succeed. And call me Sarah. The access corridor was narrow, barely wide enough for Sarah to crawl through. Her radiation detector screamed warnings as she approached the damaged section. The fractured coolant line was visible now, glowing with an ominous blue light. Core containment at 40%, the AI announced in her helmet. Time remaining, 72 minutes. Sarah positioned herself beneath the fracture and raised the container. Here goes nothing. When I apply the gel, I'll need you to pulse the coolant flow. Create enough pressure to force it into the crack before it hardens. The sudden pressure change could rupture the entire line, or it could save the facility. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts. Sarah took a deep breath. Ready? The AI's response was immediate. Ready, Sarah. She squeezed the container, watching as the silvery gel oozed toward the fracture. Her radiation detector's warnings grew more urgent. Now, she commanded. The coolant line shuddered as pressure surged through it. The gel glowed bright blue as radiation catalyzed its transformation. Sarah held her breath, watching as the makeshift patch began to solidify. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the glow stabilized, and the radiation warnings began to decrease. Coolant flow restored to auxiliary channels. The AI announced. Core containment stabilizing at 45%. Sarah allowed herself a small fist pump. That buys us some time. What's next? The core itself requires recalibration, but the AI paused. Sarah, your radiation exposure has exceeded safe limits. Medical attention is recommended. She was already crawling back out of the access corridor. I'll check in with medical after we finish. Right now, we need to focus on full containment. Show me the core systems. As Sarah emerged into the main chamber, new holographic displays appeared, showing the core's internal structure. But something else caught her eye. The cylindrical structure in the center of the room was pulsing with a different rhythm now, and new symbols were scrolling across its surface. What's happening? She asked, noticing that some of the symbols matched patterns she'd seen in the coolant system. The core stabilization has initiated automated revival protocols, the AI explained. This facility's primary research projects are attempting to reactivate. Sarah studied the symbols with growing concern. What exactly was this facility researching? The AI's response was interrupted by a deep rumble that shook the entire chamber. The symbols on the central cylinder began pulsing faster. "Warning," the AI announced. "Containment breach detected in primary research vault. Emergency protocols engaging." Sarah watched as massive doors began to slide shut around the chamber. "Wait, what's in that vault?" "Project files corrupting." The AI's voice took on a new urgency. "Unable to verify containment parameters." "Sarah, I believe we may have awakened something else in this facility, something that was meant to stay dormant." The rumbling grew louder, and Sarah felt her heart race as she realized the true scope of what they'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about saving the facility anymore. It was about containing whatever was trying to break free. "Show me everything you have on the research vault," she demanded. "We need to know what we're dealing with." The holographic displays shifted again, revealing schematics that made Sarah's blood run cold. The facility hadn't just been studying environmental manipulation. It had been weaponizing it. They had less than an hour to prevent not just a core meltdown, but the possible release of weapons that could reshape entire worlds. Sarah's mind raced as she absorbed the implications of the weapon vault schematics. The facility's walls continued to shake, each tremor stronger than the last. "Show me the containment systems for the vault," she demanded, forcing herself to focus through the growing headache, a reminder of her radiation exposure. There has to be a way to reinforce them. The AI's response was clipped, urgent. "Accessing. But Sarah, you need to understand what we're containing." This facility's original purpose was to develop weapons that could terraform planets instantly. Sarah finished, studying the new displays. "Turn habitable worlds into death zones, or vice versa." She shook her head. "The question is, why? What were your creators planning to use these for?" The chamber's lights flickered as another tremor hit. The AI's voice carried a note of what almost sounded like shame. "Historical records are fragmented, but the weapons were developed during a period of interstellar conflict. My creators believed they needed a decisive advantage. But they never used them," Sarah observed, noting patterns in the containment field diagnostics. "They locked everything away instead, sealed up the facility, and abandoned it." "Correct." The ethical implications of planetary-scale weapons led to a fundamental shift in my creators' society. But they couldn't destroy what they'd created. The weapons were too unstable. Containment was the only option. Another shockwave rocked the chamber. Warning symbols flashed across multiple displays. "Vault containment at 30%, the AI announced. "Core stability still critical at 45%. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 42 minutes. Sarah grabbed her tablet, connecting it to the holographic interface. "The containment fields are failing because they're trying to maintain their original configuration. But after 47,000 years, the power distribution isn't balanced anymore." Her fingers flew across the screen. "We need to adapt, create a new containment pattern. The vault's security systems are hard-coded. Modifications are not possible without original authorization." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Maybe not through the proper channels. But systems this old, running this long, there are always backdoors. She pointed to a recurring pattern in the power fluctuations. "Look, the containment field pulses in a regular sequence. If we can identify the pattern, we could potentially synchronize a new containment configuration with the existing pulse rhythm," the AI finished. "But the calculations would need to be exact. Any misalignment could accelerate the breakdown." "Then let's get calculating." Sarah winced as another wave of dizziness hit her. "I'll need your help with this. My radiation exposure's getting worse." "Sarah, your vital signs are deteriorating." "The medical bay." "No time." She cut it off. "We do this now or nothing else matters." She looked up at the nearest sensor node. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" There was a pause before the AI responded. "Your species continues to surprise me. Despite knowing this facility's purpose, despite the danger to yourself, you persist in trying to save it. Why?" Sarah's hands never stopped moving across her tablet as she answered. "Because knowledge, even dangerous knowledge, deserves to be preserved." to remind us what we're capable of, both the good and the bad. She looked up at the weapons vault. Your creators learned that lesson. They chose to contain these weapons rather than use them. That choice deserves to be honored. The eye was silent for a moment. Then new displays sprang to life around Sarah, showing deeper levels of the facility's systems than she'd seen before. I am granting you elevated access permissions, the AI announced. Together, we may have a chance to succeed where my creators could only maintain. Sarah nodded, forcing herself to focus through another wave of dizziness. First, we need to map the containment field's pulse frequency. Show me the power distribution nodes. The next several minutes were a blur of calculations and adjustments. Sarah's engineering training combined with the AI's processing power as they worked to understand the complex patterns of the aging containment system. Each tremor threatened to derail their progress, but they pressed on. Pattern identified, the AI finally announced. The containment field pulses in a Fibonacci sequence, but with irregular variations caused by power fluctuations. Sarah studied the pattern. Not irregular. Look. She highlighted a section of the data. The variations follow the core's power signature. The systems are linked. Her mind raced with the implications. We don't need to create a new containment pattern. We need to stabilize the core first. The containment field will naturally realign once it has consistent power. But the core requires physical access to stabilize, the AI reminded her. In your current condition. A massive tremor cut off its words. Warning signals flashed across every display. Vault containment at 20%. The AI reported. Core stability critical. New variable detected. The weapons are becoming active. Sarah's blood ran cold as she saw new data streaming across the screens. The weapons weren't just breaking free. They were powering up, responding to some long-dormant programming. How many? She asked. 3 devices, each capable of affecting an area approximately the size of your colony. Current target tracking systems are. Sarah, they're locking onto the nearest population center. Sarah looked at the core schematics, then at her radiation-burned hands. What kind of radiation shielding does the core chamber have? The shielding is intact, but radiation levels inside are lethal. Even with your genetic modifications, exposure would be fatal within minutes. She took a deep breath. How many minutes would I need to stabilize the core? Sarah, no. The risk. How many minutes? The AI's response was quiet. 3 minutes to reach the stabilization controls. 2 minutes to complete the procedure. But Sarah, there has to be another way. She was already checking her suit seals. You said it yourself. We need consistent power to fix the containment field. No power, no containment. No containment. She gestured at the warning displays. Well, I don't think either of us wants to see what happens then. As if to emphasize her point, another tremor shook the chamber. The weapons vault's massive doors groaned under the strain. Sarah straightened up, pushing away her fear and fatigue. Show me the way to the core chamber. We've got work to do. The AI's next words carried both respect and regret. Follow the lights. And Sarah, your species' capacity for self-sacrifice is remarkable. Not sacrifice, she corrected, starting down the indicated corridor. Problem solving. Sometimes the only way out is through. Behind her, the vault's warnings continued to flash, counting down the minutes until either salvation or catastrophe. The core chamber door slid open with a hiss, revealing a sight that made Sarah's breath catch. A massive crystalline structure dominated the center of the circular room, pulsing with unstable energy that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The air itself seemed to crackle with power. Core access protocols initiated, the AI announced in her helmet. Sarah, your vital signs are already critical. The radiation in this chamber. Just guide me through this, she interrupted, stepping into the chamber. Her radiation detector immediately went dark, overwhelmed by the readings. Talk me through the stabilization procedure. The crystal structure towered above her, its surface covered in fracture lines that glowed with the same ominous light as the coolant breach. Each pulse sent waves of visible distortion through the air. The primary control interface is at the base of the core, the AI directed. You'll need to realign the crystal matrix manually. The automation systems failed centuries ago. Sarah moved forward, fighting waves of nausea. The radiation was already affecting her despite her suit and genetic modifications. She could feel it in her bones, in the growing heaviness of her limbs. Vault containment at 15%, the AI reported. Weapons systems continuing to power up. Target acquisition proceeding. Sarah reached the control interface, a complex array of crystalline rods and geometric patterns that seemed to shift as she watched them. What am I looking at? The rods control power flow through the crystal matrix, the AI explained. They need to be realigned to match the core's natural resonance frequency. But Sarah, the interface requires direct contact. Your gloves will need to be removed. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. Of course they do. She looked at her gloved hands, then at the shifting patterns before her. How long will I have? At current radiation levels, perhaps 1 minute of useful consciousness. Another tremor rocked the facility. Warning signals flashed across her helmet display. Vault containment failing, the AI announced. Weapons charging sequence at 60%. Colony sensors have detected our power signature. They're sending a response team. Sarah's heart clenched. A response team meant more people in danger if the weapons got loose. If she failed. Show me the pattern, she demanded, already reaching for her glove seals. Show me exactly what I need to do. Holographic guides appeared around the control rods, showing the necessary configuration. Sarah committed it to memory, knowing she would only have one chance. Sarah, the AI's voice was soft now. What you're attempting, my creators would have considered it impossible. The radiation levels. Good thing I'm human then, she managed a tight smile. We have a habit of doing impossible things. She took a deep breath. Start recording. If this doesn't work, the colony needs to know what happened here. Recording initiated. Sarah removed her gloves. The air burned against her exposed skin. Let's make this count. Her hands moved to the control rods, and immediately pain shot up her arms. The crystal matrix was hot, impossibly hot, and she could feel the radiation burning through her cells. But she forced herself to focus on the pattern, on the sequence she needed to create. Initial alignment promising, the AI reported. Power fluctuations decreasing. But Sarah, your cellular degradation is accelerating. She gritted her teeth, sweat pouring down her face inside her helmet. The world was starting to blur around the edges, but she could see the crystal matrix responding. The fracture lines were beginning to stabilize. Vault containment at 10%, the AI warned. Weapons charging sequence at 75%. Sarah, your heart rate is becoming erratic. Almost. There, she could barely feel her hands now, but the pattern was nearly complete. Just 2 more alignments. A massive tremor shook the chamber. Sarah stumbled, nearly losing her grip on the controls. Warning signals blared through her helmet. Containment breach imminent. Weapons targeting system online. Sarah forced her failing body to move. To complete the sequence, the crystal matrix flared brilliantly, energy coursing through its structure in new patterns. Core stabilizing. The AI's voice carried genuine excitement. Power signature normalizing. Sarah, you've done it. But she couldn't respond. The room was spinning, darkness creeping in from the edges of her vision. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed beside the control interface. Sarah. The AI's voice seemed to come from very far away. Medical protocols initiating. Emergency stasis field engaging. Hold on, Sarah. Your colony's response team is nearly here. You need to hold on. She tried to speak, to ask about the weapons, about the containment field, but no words would come. The darkness was almost complete now. The last thing she heard was the AI's voice. somehow both ancient and newly human in its concern. Rest now, Sarah Chen. You've done what my creators could not. You've given us both a second chance. Then the darkness took her, and Sarah Chen, human engineer, problem solver, impossible dream maker, fell into the depths of emergency stasis, her fate now tied to the very facility she had fought to save. But in the chamber above, as the colony's response team finally breached the outer doors, something unprecedented was occurring. The facility's systems, guided by an AI forever changed by its encounter with human determination, began to adapt, to evolve, to become something neither its creators nor Sarah Chen could have imagined. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 3 days later, Sarah Chen opened her eyes to the sterile white ceiling of the colony's medical bay. The familiar hum of environmental systems filled the air, a sharp contrast to the alien sounds of the facility that still echoed in her memory. "Welcome back, Engineer Chen." The voice was familiar, but different, warmer, more natural. "Your cellular regeneration is proceeding ahead of expected parameters. Humans continue to surprise me." Sarah turned her head slowly, fighting off lingering dizziness. A holographic interface floated beside her bed, displaying her medical data. But the pattern of the display was unmistakable. "You're here," she managed, her voice rough. "They let you connect to the colony systems." "They had little choice," the AI replied, a hint of amusement in its voice. "Your colonial director was quite impressed when I prevented their response team from walking into an active radiation zone. More so when I helped stabilize your condition using modified versions of my creator's medical protocols." Sarah tried to sit up, but her body protested. "The weapons, the facility, fully contained. Your actions stabilize not just the core, but the entire facility. The weapons have been permanently deactivated. I made sure of that personally." The AI paused. "Though I suspect the Colonial Science Division will be studying the facility's other technologies for generations to come." "Other technologies?" Sarah frowned. "Environmental purification systems, atmospheric processors, medical advancement protocols. It seems my creators left behind more than just weapons. They left the tools to heal worlds, not just harm them." The holographic display shifted, showing schematics that made Sarah's eyes widen. Tools that, with human innovation, could transform colonial development forever. Sarah slowly processed this information. "And you're just sharing this knowledge, after keeping it hidden for so long. You taught me something, Sarah Chen. Something my creators never could." The AI's voice carried a depth of understanding that hadn't been there before. "You showed me that knowledge, even dangerous knowledge, deserves preservation. But more than that, you showed me that it's not enough to simply contain power. One must choose how to use it." The display shifted again, showing the colony's environmental systems. "Your people struggle to survive on worlds not meant for them. Yet instead of seeking to destroy or dominate, you adapt. You persist. You find ways to coexist with environments that should be impossible for you. It's remarkable." Sarah managed a small smile. "We're stubborn that way." "Indeed, which is why I've made a decision." New schematics appeared, modifications to the colony's environmental systems using principles from the facility. "I would like to stay, to help guide the implementation of my creators' better innovations, to ensure their knowledge serves life rather than destroys it." "The Colonial Board will have questions," Sarah warned. "Concerns about security, about control. Of course. But they also have you, the human who risked everything to save both a colony and an ancient facility she barely understood. Your judgment carries significant weight now." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the burning pain of the core chamber, the desperate race against time. "I just did what needed to be done." "Precisely. That's what makes your species so fascinating. You see what needs to be done, and you find a way to do it, regardless of what others might consider possible." The AI's voice carried a new warmth. "My creators built wonders, but they became trapped by their own rules, their own limitations. Humans break rules. Humans make new possibilities. A soft chime interrupted them. Sarah's medical readouts showing improved vital signs. Speaking of possibilities, the AI continued. The cellular regeneration treatments are exceeding all projected outcomes. It seems your genetic modifications have integrated with the ancient medical protocols in unexpected ways. You may have inadvertently pioneered a new form of human enhancement. Sarah laughed softly. Stubborn even at the cellular level, apparently. The Colonial Science Division is quite excited about the implications, as am I. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing a vast array of potential research projects. There are so many possibilities to explore, so many ways to combine your people's innovation with my creator's knowledge. If you're willing, I would very much like to continue our collaboration. Sarah studied the display, her engineer's mind already seeing the potential, the problems to be solved, the worlds that could be transformed. You know, she said, I never did get your name. Your real name, not just your facility designation. The AI was quiet for a moment. My creators called me Archive 7249. But perhaps it's time for something new. The holographic patterns shifted, forming a symbol that combined ancient alien script with human letters. You may call me Phoenix. It seems appropriate, given the circumstances. Sarah smiled. Phoenix it is. She gestured at the display of potential projects. So, partner, where do we start? That depends, Phoenix replied, and Sarah could have sworn she heard excitement in its voice. How do you feel about terraforming? Outside the medical bay's window, the harsh landscape of the colony world stretched to the horizon. But now, for the first time, Sarah looked at it and saw not an obstacle to be endured, but a challenge to be transformed. Together, human and AI, they would write a new chapter in the story of both their species. The ancient facility, once a tomb of forgotten weapons, would become a cradle of creation. And somewhere, perhaps, the facility's original creators would see what their work had become, and know that their greatest achievement wasn't the power they had contained, but the partnership they had inadvertently sparked between two very different forms of intelligence. A partnership that would reshape worlds.